U.S. Walked into, a morass or a quagmire difficult to extract itself from. Never interrupt your opponent when he is making a mistake. Certainly while the U.S. is tied down, I think while it's certainly, I think, is in China's interest. Is while the U.S. military, the tip of the U.S. military spear is sharp, the shaft is brittle. I think in approach to diplomacy that is more than just tactical, but again, I would say it's philosophical as well. But this may actually irrevocably damage the trust that, in particular, the GCC countries. I think you're certainly right that the U.S. Walked into, a morass or a quagmire. And there's an American phrase, FOFO, right? Mess around and find out. And I think it really, again, for whatever reasons, is finding itself entangled in a situation that's very, very difficult to extract itself from. And I think the best way to understand maybe how China is viewing this is there's a very famous saying, I believe, attributed to Napoleon: never interrupt your opponent when he is making a mistake. So I think that from that perspective, certainly while the U.S. is tied down, I think while it's a Navy which was originally under tremendous stress, and one way I've heard it put is while the U.S. military, the tip of the U.S. military spear is sharp, the shaft is brittle. And I think we are seeing that play out as well. So that certainly distraction, certainly I think, is in China's interest. And then I think finally, China's approach to this really has been, to any kind of conflict, is to resolve it through mutual discussion, respect for sovereignty versus any sort of direct military intervention. So I think it does seem, as we heard Katrina just say too, that it seems unlikely that China would intervene in the way that President Trump is hoping for. Well, I think that's an interesting approach because certainly I think from the Chinese perspective, again, it recognizes and respects the bilateral relationship between China and the United States. But I think also, as we've seen over the last year or so, China also exerts tremendous leverage over the United States. It's not just the rare earth metals, it's the Boeing aircraft, it's the soybeans sold by American farmers. So I think while certainly personal relationships matter in diplomacy, just as they say in Hollywood, it's not show friends, it's show business. And I think that's even more true of diplomacy. Yes, I think that's absolutely right, Mon. And I think, again, this is a very profound difference, I think, in approach to diplomacy that is more than just tactical. But again, I would say it's philosophical as well. I also want to mention, I think, a very, very important point here that's not perhaps well appreciated. So China, of course, through rare earth metals, actually provides critical inputs into Patriot missiles, et cetera. So this is one area that I think the U.S. is acutely aware of. But at the same time, because of its manufacturing supply chain for drones, its components, it is also, even though perhaps not at the state level, actively supporting Iran in this way. But certainly, I think, again, providing critical inputs through market mechanisms to Iran to continue this conflict, to defend itself from this aggression from the United States and Israel. So I think this dynamic, I think, is also very, very important to appreciate. Right. Well, again, I think China's approach is, first of all, not to take one side over the other. And I think we see this very clearly in West Asia or the Middle East, in that it believes in the importance of relationships with all countries in the region. So it's not just the GCC countries. It's also, as we're talking about today, it's Iran, it's Israel. So and I think this is a very different approach to how the U.S. approaches diplomacy in this region. And I think, again, we're seeing the negative impact on this. So it's not only the short-term oil disruption, the impact it might have on global economies, including the United States. But this may actually irrevocably damage the trust that, in particular, the GCC countries have in the United States. So I think, again, there are, I think, very high costs to the U.S. approach of taking one side. And I think these are becoming more visible with this recent action by the Trump administration.